Singapore lays in the end of Strait Malacca between Indonesia and Malaysia. Singapore had achieved impressive economic performance since gaining independence in 1965. The country had moved from $500 GDP per capita in 1965 to $10,000 in 1989. By the year 2008, GDP per capita had reached $37,597, the fourth in the world. The journey of Singapore as a nation to become as it is now is written in the long history book of Singapore.
Singapore, like many Asian countries, has a long history involving colonialism, imperialism, and many shifts of power. The recorded history of Singapore begins within the history of Sriwijaya, the ancient empire who gave the name Singapura, replacing the old name Temasek.
Legend says Sang Nila Utama, the Prince of Palembang Sriwijaya, made an unexpected landing in Temasek Island. While seeking shelter from the storm, he sighted an animal on that island that appeared to be a lion. He declared the island's new name to be Singapura, which means Lion City, in 1324.
Saya tak sukalah nama ni, Port Temasek. Harus diganti lah. Mulai saat ini nak dicakapkan jadi Singapura. Betul?
And that was the story, approximately. A modern history of Singapore dated in the early 18th century from the discovery of island's superb natural port by Sir Stamford Raffles, an officer of the British East India Company. Raffles instantly recognized the trading potential of the site, which he predicted as a place of considerably magnitude of importance, and the emporium of seven seas.
This port will be the biggest port in the world.
In 1826, Singapore became a part of the British Strait Settlement, and in 1867, the Strait Settlement became Crown Colony. Straits and duty-free policy became an important selling point for Singapore as it developed a classic entrepot economy. During World War II, the British were defeated and surrendered on 15 February 1942. Japan occupied Singapore for 3.5 years, making it its capital port during wartime. In September 1945, the British reclaimed Singapore after the Japanese surrendered. On 31 August 1963, Singapore declared independence from Britain and joined with Malaya, Sabah, and Sarawak to form the new Federation of Malaysia. And in 1965, the independent Singapore had become a nation of its own.
Lee Kuan Yew, the first elected Prime Minister, built the political stability as a base of economic development. Media is fully controlled and citizens are guided to be obedient. The initiative in economy were jobs creation and providing the housing. Later on, trade policy to encourage foreign investment takes place, and all the initiatives are successful. That brings economic stability to Singapore and independent Singapore.
Since Singapore should stand on its own feet, new targets were set, a government-guided strategy to a prosperous nation. The strategy including setting a high national output target, construction for high government spending, maintaining a very low inflation rate, and CPF for country saving. Some related policies introduced: maintain currency rate below the lower market, tariffs and duties of imports and exports are set at low rates. Also the establishment of EDB, a board to seek investment from multinational companies to promote the foreign investment. Government-linked companies were established only by joint venture with foreign companies. The government provided the initial capital for this GLC, and in 1974, all the investment were incorporated into Temasek Holdings. With all of these initiatives, Singapore real GDP growth accelerated to 12.9% in 1966 to 1973, which was probably the highest ever in the world. In 1985, Singapore was in a deep recession, accompanied by sharp rise in unemployment, weak external demand, low profits, and much reduced investment in manufacturing. This recession was said caused by the dependence on the construction. The Economic Committee recommended that government lessen its extensive managerial and development role to allow the private sector more freedom, including here the flexibility in wage setting and scaling back the mandatory contribution to the Social Security Fund. In 1987, strong world trade growth and the corrective measures by Economic Committee brought recovery to Singapore. Singapore continued its prosper, with growing population reached 3 million people by the late of 1980s.
By the late 1980s, Singapore population had reached over 3 million, including foreign workers. With the form of Chinese, can I change with the oranges?
Oh, sure, sir.
Thank you. With the form of Chinese 78%,
你好嘛
Malays 14%,
Macam mana pula ni?
Indian 17%,
कुछ कुछ होता है.
and Europeans and other 1%.
I love you.
But the condition in late 1980s forced Singapore to shift its strategies.
Government-like companies, established in the earlier years to operate key infrastructure, remained the country's largest employer into 1990s. More than 450 companies in which the government had a majority stake, such as Singapore Airlines and Singapore Telecom, was established. In November 1990, Goh Chok Tong was elected as the second Prime Minister of Singapore, replacing Lee Kuan Yew. In early 1991, Goh Chok Tong, the new appointed Prime Minister of Singapore, issued a long-range plan called the Next Plan. The plan plotted long-run social and economic goals for Singapore. Goh Chok Tong's new government concerns was that familiar Singaporean insecurity of small island in the big hostile world. External events can shake us, as they have in the past. Nothing is certain. We have to stay united, work hard, save, look after each other, be quick to seize opportunities and be vigilant. No one owes us a living, we have to earn it.
Ladies and gentlemen, as the chairman of Economic Review Committee, I will convey our recommendation to further boost our economic and society. The first one, short-term adjustment to improve the relative cost positions of companies operating in Singapore. The second one, wide-ranging, including expanding economic ties with countries in the wider region, spanning in India, China, Japan, and also Australia. The third one, establish 13 free trade agreements with various countries, especially with United States. And the fourth one, strengthen regional integration with ASEAN. And the fifth one, our government linked companies or GLCs, including Temasek Holding, to be more active investors abroad. And the sixth one, establish workforce development agency to lead efforts to upgrade our workers' skills. And the seventh one, in science policy, establish National Research Foundation and new efforts to further develop our country's IT infrastructure and the use of e-services in government. And the eighth one, through the Ministry of Information, Communication and the Arts, or MICA, we plan to transform Singapore into a vibrant global city for information and the arts. And last but not least, turn the entire downtown of Marina Bay area into an exciting environment for business, tourism, and residents as the most visible symbols of the economic transformations. Thank you.
Between 2004-2008, Singapore grew strongly. Singapore trade grew strongly to $338 billion in exports, an increase of 88% relative to 2004. Foreign direct investment flows reached $22.7 billion in 2008, up 13.3% between 2004-2008. In August 2006, Lee Hsien Loong called an early general election after Goh Chok Tong stepped down. He won by wide margin.
By 2008, Singapore was ranked 4th of the most prosperous country in the world, ahead of USA, Ireland, and Hong Kong. Singapore's trade was well over 400% of GDP, and the trade balance registered a surplus of $22.5 billion or 12.3% of GDP.
Singapore has the world's best environment in terms of rules and regulation for conducting business. Corruption practically did not exist. Domestic fixed investment rate was 28.5%. Singapore had become the largest outward investor, ahead of Brazil and China.
Dari Telkomsel.
The Singaporean economy was built upon portfolio of clusters that include petrochemicals, transportation and logistics, finance, information technology, education, and of course, tourism.
Then what about Indonesia? If only the government of Indonesia can adopt the strategy of Singapore to Batam Island, then Strait Malacca will have twin diamond, and one of it belongs to our country, Indonesia. But unfortunately, since the year of 2000, the development of Batam is slowing down because of complexity of decentralization of power. But we believe, with a clear guideline, with a strong strategy and strong law enforcement, Batam Island can become the Singapore of Indonesia. Indonesia bisa!
Ya
so. You know I love you so. I swam across, I jumped across for